Hey guys, it's Anna Bright here, #2 pickleball pro in the world. Welcome to my channel. If you are a regular viewer, I'm sorry, I'm in a different spot. I'm currently at the PPA in Cape Coral. The backgrounds have been questionable in my videos, but the content is king. Please subscribe for the content. I appreciate all of you guys, and let's get right on into it. I'm going to be talking about what I think every single MLP team is going to be doing this season and the ad drop period and who they're going to drop and what they're going to do in the draft. Before I really get going in all the analysis, I just wanted to shout out Eric Tice, who I got all this data from. The opinions are mine, but his data, without it, you wouldn't be watching this video. So thank you, Eric, and let's get into it. Quick rundown. So basically in the original draft in 2024, teams could pick 4 players. They could keep 2 of them for 3 years, and this is the 3rd year. They can only keep 1 player for 2 years, so those are the people that have to get dropped now for the most part. And also if teams made a trade in 2025, they can keep that player for 2 years. The last thing is anyone that was picked up off of waivers must be dropped. That comes into play a lot, especially with the challenger teams and with a few premier teams, but those are some things to know. It's okay if you don't really get it. I'm going to be breaking down everything. So the first teams I'm going to talk about are your contenders, teams that we could realistically see make a very deep run into the playoffs, teams that could even win it all. So I expect these teams to spend a little bit more in the draft, spend more to maintain their position, maybe reacquire players. I think it's going to be like a lot of players kind of moving around between tiers. So the first team we have to talk about is, of course, the reigning 2025 MLP regular season champions, the Columbus Sliders. They currently have on their roster Andre Daescu, CJ Klinger, Paris Todd, Leah Jansen, and Marcella Hones. They have to drop Ross Whitaker because he was acquired off of waivers, but I don't think he was really going to be in the lineup for them anyways. Because of a lot of trades, the Sliders actually do not have to drop anyone. So there have definitely been some chemistry issues, and they did underperform at the MLP Cup, but I don't really expect them to make any moves. I don't expect them to drop anyone, and I also don't really expect any trades. I feel like if trades would have happened, they would have happened by now. So I think the Sliders stay put. And the second place team in the 2025 regular season, the New Jersey Fives, who definitely that was a painful loss for them. They have some interesting decisions to make. They traded away Zane Navratil to the Slice in exchange for cash. They're able to keep Noe for $50,000, which is an absolute steal. Will is also very cheap. Annalie cost $340,000, but that is expected for her. And then they have to choose between keeping Megan Dazan or Mari Humberg as their last player that they can retain. I expect them to drop Mari, but I actually wouldn't be surprised if they drop Megan as well. She played very, very well for the Fives, but her keeper cost is actually $150,000. And I expect that the Fives ownership will think they could probably reacquire her for cheaper, or it kind of gives them the ability to kind of see and watch what happens, and maybe another very good woman will become available. And I wouldn't be surprised if they went for that particular woman, because one thing about the Fives, they want to win, and they want to win now. Up next, let's talk about my team. I am on the St. Louis Shock, and my team, along with the Dallas Flash, which I will talk about next, probably have the most interesting decisions to make. So my team has to drop one of myself, Hayden Patriquin, or Gabe Tardio. We can retain Kate Fahey and Judith Castillo. Eric Lang has been moved into a coaching role, so we do have another male slot open. I cost $295,000 to retain. Hayden costs $102,500, and Gabe cost $92,500. Am I looking at notes? No. This is all in my brain. Notes? I don't need notes. But this is probably the most interesting decision, and I will be very, very curious. Assuming the Shock want to bring back the same team, if they want to bring back the same team, then there's a ton of game theory here, right? Do they drop me because they don't expect a lot of other top women will be dropped, and then they think, okay, we won't have to compete that hard to reacquire her. We can get her back for, pretty cheap, maybe even have a decrease in overall roster cost? Or do they not want to take that risk of losing a top woman and they want to drop one of the boys and plan, okay, people aren't going to spend as much on men anyways? It's a really tough decision. I don't envy them if their intention is to bring one of us back. If their intention is to have a new team, then that really changes things, but I think it's really, really interesting. And just one other thing I want to point out here, if they drop me and they intend to reacquire me, they would also have to drop Judith. So you cannot draft in the free agency draft unless you have an empty starter spot. You can't have 2 of the same gender already. So whereas if they drop one of the boys, they would not need to drop another man because we would only have 1 man on the team. So that's just a little bit of nuance, but I think it'll be me. But me and Gabe and Kate and Hayden have talked about this. We all go back and forth, but I honestly think it's going to be me. Who do you think it'll be? I'm expensive. The Dallas Flash also have a super, super interesting decision to make. They have to drop one of Tyra Black, Georgia Johnson, and JW Johnson. I do think Tyra is going to be the drop. Even though she is actually very cheap, you're not going to get Tyra back for the same price, but I think from a branding perspective, and especially with how integrated the Johnsons and Julie Johnson are with ownership, I think it's most likely that Tyra gets dropped and they will probably intend to reacquire her. I do think it's very interesting that the Flash traded away Roscoe Bellamy. I think Roscoe is obviously an elite singles player, especially now with the new rules. They could have opted to play Roscoe, which would have strengthened the upper half of their Dreambreaker lineup if they could have Roscoe playing instead of Augie. And I also think Roscoe is getting better at doubles. He brings a lot of length, and especially you see him on the right with J-Dub, he might add a little bit of offense in the middle. So I thought it was interesting that they traded away Roscoe. I would expect that they will probably drop Tyra and look to reacquire her, but should they do that and no other top women are dropped, I think some teams will really be vying hard for her. The LA Mad Drops made a very big move trading for Max Freeman and letting go of Hunter Johnson. I do not expect any further moves from them. They have a very well-rounded roster with Ben, Catherine, Jade, and Max. Ben will be playing with 2 lefties actually, and I'll be very curious to see how they do. Just to note though, next year they will have to drop Ben, Jade, and Catherine. So a lot of these teams are going to be, a lot of like really good players are going to become available at the end of the 2026 season. The Texas Rangers were described by NML as a mystery wrapped in an enigma in a recent tweet, which I think is truly so accurate. I have no idea what the Rangers are doing. I don't even know who's running the Texas Rangers anymore. I don't know if Christian still has beef with ownership. I don't know if everything has kind of been sorted there. The Rangers have been doing the absolute most. They traded away Caitlin Christian in exchange for Victoria DiMuzio, and I do not think they will be keeping Victoria. She cost $70,000 to retain, and I do not think she is worth that. If they want to reacquire her, I would expect that they'll be able to do it for cheaper. And they also traded Tina Pisnik, who has been really solid for them, away to the Palm Beach Royals, which I will talk about in a second. So they currently, to my knowledge, do not have any women. I'm looking at my notes. I could be wrong, but I don't think they have any women. And they cannot keep Wyatt Stone because he was acquired off of waivers. So they are effectively left with Eric and Christian. So they need girls, and I do not think the Rangers are a team that doesn't want to be in the mix for a title. So I am very curious what they have up their sleeve. I bet they are heavily looking at some players with a lot of upside, maybe some juniors. I'll be really curious to see what the Rangers have in store for us. Tough to predict what they're going to do. Mystery wrapped in enigma is absolutely accurate. I honestly wouldn't even be surprised if they traded away one of their men and to get something crazy, to get a good girl or something. Both their men have high trade value. It's hard to predict what they're going to do, but I wouldn't be surprised at anything, but they don't have to drop anyone. The Palm Beach Royals, they are such an interesting team. They are the league's first kind of true expansion team, especially that have received help with the new expansion rules. They acquired Sophia Seving using said expansion rules for $80,000 and also received Tina Pisnik from the Ranchers. I think this will be a very interesting women's team. You have a lot of experience with Tina, and then Sophia's kind of new and shiny, a little bit more raw, but putting things together really quickly. I will be curious what sides are played because Tina is a lot more comfortable on the left in women's doubles, but she is obviously very competent on the right. She's got a lot of really excellent mixed results. I haven't seen Sophia play too much women's on the right, but I do think that'll be a bit of an interesting dynamic, but I'm sure they'll be really solid right off the jump. So they need men. And it's interesting, with expansion rules, they could either pay cash for men, just as they did with Tina, or they could acquire a current free agent for $80,000. A lot of teams have been speculating, are they going to take Kwong? Are they going to take Will McKinnon? Are they going to take Cam Chafin? Are they going to take AJ? And I don't think they're going to take anyone. Are any of those men worth $80,000? Like when you think about the very first pick of last year's free agency draft was Kate Fahey for $130K. I don't really feel that any of those men right now are worth more than Kate was then. So I think there's a very good chance the Royals say, no, we're not going to take anyone. We're going to save our money and we're going to look to spend big in the actual free agency draft that'll be happening in a couple of weeks. What do you guys think they're going to do? Who are they eyeing? I think they're eyeing whoever the shock drops if it's a guy. One last note on the Royals, I do think that they will be targeting a very good singles player for their third female to make up for Tina as a singles player. Tina's not a bad singles player, but just when you consider her age and that she has a one-handed back and she doesn't pass the best. So I would not be surprised at all if with their third female, they target a very good singles player to help their Dreambreaker lineup. So I think that's what I meant in the last video when I said that these new rules raise the value of people who are very good at singles. And it also raises the value of people who are good at doubles, but not that good at singles, because now they're not impacting their team as much because the team can just slot in a singles player. The last team I am placing in the contender category is the Brooklyn Pickleball team. The Brooklyn Pickleball team has to make no moves, which I'm sure Jake Gelvar, hi Jake, is very, very happy about. They have Dekel Bar, Riley Newman, Jackie Kawamoto, Rachel Rohrabacher, and Pat Smith and Hannah Blatt on their bench. I don't anticipate any big moves here, or any drops really, but they are in an interesting situation where one can't help but wonder, they're super, super good. They can win matches against anyone, but can they win it all? They are definitely in the contender category and very much in the mix. I do expect them to target some very good singles players with their last gender spots in order to strengthen their Dreambreaker lineup, because this is a really solid doubles team across the board, but they struggled in singles. Riley especially kind of fits in that same boat as Tina, where he's just not the best singles player, but a very, very good doubles player, and they could really benefit from a very strong woman playing the #1 spot in singles. So Brooklyn, I don't expect any big moves, but I do expect them to target singles specialists in their last gender spots. The next class of teams we're going to talk about are teams that are kind of in the mix. They could pull off an upset. They could maybe rise to that contender echelon if they really hit on some draft picks, if they spend really big, if they hit on upside, maybe they pull off a crazy trade, maybe they absolutely fleece someone. These are teams that are kind of in that zone. They're kind of in between. They could choose to spend a lot and kind of rise into a contender, or they could choose to not really spend, not really develop their talent, not really invest too much, and they could kind of fall into the lowest tier of the league. So these teams they have an identity thing. What are they going to do? So the first team I would put in this category is the Orlando Squeeze. They have an interesting decision to make. They have to drop one of their 4 starters. They have Lacey Schneemann right now, Millen Rain, Dylan Frazier, and Federico Staxrud. The cost, I think Millie is actually completely free. I think Lacey costs about $22,500 to keep, and Federico costs $200,000, and Dylan costs $177,500. So I think that the Squeeze will drop Dylan because he costs so much and they can reacquire him for cheaper. I also think the Squeeze are in an interesting position where they are probably looking to make some trades. By the time this video is being watched, I wouldn't be surprised if they have already made some trades, because if they want to rise into that upper echelon, and they're a team that is pretty invested, they're very invested in their community, they just hired a new president. I had such a good time playing for the Squeeze. I think they want to be in that contender category, so I would not be surprised if they are looking to spend this draft. So I do think they'll drop Dylan, and I do think they will probably also drop one or both of their women in addition, and just kind of see what's available and kind of go from there. And I also think trades are on the board entirely for them. The next team in this category is the Miami Pickleball Club. I wrote in my notes that they should actually be called the Miami Pickleball Academy, because they draft smart, they develop their talent, and then they sell them off. We saw them do this with Noe, we saw them do it with Eric Onsens, we saw them do it with Millie, and they keep making savvy moves. They also sold away Jay recently and made money on him. So Miami currently has extremely low keeper costs. They are insanely savvy. They currently have on their roster Tatiana Rule, Tammy Emmerich, Alex Trong, who they recently traded for, Juan Benitez, and Yuta Funamizu. I don't really expect them to make any big swings or spend a ton of money, but I do expect them to probably drop Tatiana as she has the least upside, and I think they will make some big time upside picks with their last gender spots, as Johnny Goldberg usually does. They'll probably get better, and then they might just ship them off, but at some point I expect Miami to hold on to some of their talent, but that's what I think they'll do this go around. The Atlanta Bouncers are an interesting team that have made some very good moves in the offseason. Their keeper costs are currently very low, only around $65,000 in total, and they currently have Jamie Martinez-Vick, Jay DeVilliers, Caitlin Christian, and Rachel Recker. I expect they will probably drop Rachel Recker in order to acquire another female, and then again look to make some savvy picks in the 5th and 6th positions. But this is a very scary team and a pretty cheap team. I'm very excited to see what Atlanta does, and I wouldn't be surprised if they spent on, a 4th piece there in order to really kind of push towards that upper echelon, even if they're not fully there. The Chicago Slice were heavily impacted by the terminations that happened in Japan, which impacted Vivian Glosman and James Ignatowicz. I do think that Vivian's, suspension, and Vivian's not her suspension, her termination is more impactful, because she was actually completely free. She was a steal. She was probably the steal of the draft in terms of cost, in terms of like upside and talent and everything. Didn't always put things together, but when she did, very scary. I don't actually think James getting terminated was a big deal for them, because he cost $90,000 to retain, and I don't think they would have retained him. But without those players, their roster is currently Callie Smith, Hunter Johnson, Carlos Delora, and Pieti Imperato. Carlos recently had a really big win in Cape Coral, and they traded and acquired Hunter. I wouldn't expect any big moves really from them. I don't think they have to drop anyone as it stands, but after they spent a good amount in 2025 and their team didn't really perform that well, I feel like they're probably a little bit sour. I wouldn't expect them to be spending big in the draft. The Utah Black Diamonds are another team that performed probably higher than expectations, and I just really want to shout out Connor Pardo and their ownership group because I think it's so cool that they managed to have an entirely Utah-based team. I think that's so cool, really good for brand continuity and engagement and just kind of everything. But I wonder if some of that is going to change this season. So Utah has to drop one of their current 4 starters, Elise Jones, Etta Tuionotea, Tyler Leung, or Connor Garnett. I expect they will drop Etta Wright, as she costs about $155,000 to retain and is by far the most expensive. I actually wouldn't be surprised if they also dropped Connor Garnett, who costs $70,000 to retain, and they might figure they can get him back for cheaper. Connor also, to my knowledge, is moving out of Utah. I don't know if that affects things for them. I expect the Diamonds to continue to stay competitive, continue to stay in the mix, and to continue to be savvy. The Las Vegas Night Owls were our 2025 Challenger champions, and their title kind of ended up meaning nothing. But still, major congrats to them. So they are in a really interesting situation. The Night Owls traded for Liz Trueluck and Roscoe Bellamy. Like I said before, I think Roscoe is a really good kind of pick up by someone, and I like that he's on this team. So they have those 2 players, and then they also have to drop one of Brooke Buckner, Pablo Tellez, or Zoe Wong. So the keeper costs are all negligible for those 3, but it's actually my expectation that they will drop Zoe Wong. I just think that they might feel like they are in a better position going forward with Brooke and Pablo, and I think it's interesting, and I wonder if this is intentional, but Liz is actually from Charlotte, as is Brooke, so I wonder if maybe they were thinking about that in that regard, and then they're thinking, oh, Brooke and Liz can get a lot of reps together. So I'll be really curious about that, and I'm really curious if it's like Pablo and Roscoe, just how they will do together. I think they could actually be a very good team, and I'm very curious how the Challenger champions will fare at the premier level, competing with the rest of us. The Phoenix Flames were kind of the showboat team of MLP last year. They had a ton of personality. They were kind of day ruiners. They had all the signs on the sideline. Brent was always doing the absolute most. We had the whistle. The whistle was so annoying. I couldn't stand that damn whistle.
The whistle made me want to cheer against the Flames, even though I like it.
Yeah, I don't think the whistle should be allowed. It's very shrill. It hurts your ears. But they have an interesting situation. They actually don't have to drop anyone. They have Jack Sock, Tyson McGuffin, Alex Walker, Jeannie Bouchard, and Jesse Irvin. They don't have to drop anyone, but you can't really, I don't really know if they'll, some people are saying like they have to trade Jess or Jeannie. There's no way they play together. I don't know that that's true. I'm not really in with that group, but if they're going to do anything, they're going to trade, do something there. But I also think Alex is super competent. I think Alex is a really good player. So I wouldn't expect any big moves here from the Flames, but I would not be surprised at all if one of Jesse or Jeannie gets shipped off. And if it had to be one of the 2 of them, I feel like it would more likely be Jessie. Her trade value is probably actually quite high. I think she's been playing pretty well lately, and they seem to really want to keep Jeannie on their team for marketing purposes. And Jeannie's also playing well, and she's very good at singles too. So if anything, you could have her play singles, but I think Jeannie will probably stay with the Flames. I think there's a good chance Jessie does as well, but if they're going to do something, I would think they're probably going to trade Jessie. Next tier of teams I'm talking about are kind of the teams where it's like, we don't really know what's going on. Like, I'm not really expecting too much, but like, good luck. I think these teams absolutely, there's no reason they couldn't end up, rising into the middle of the pack teams, but I think they would have to spend just because they do not have many pieces that are worth a lot of money, or they'd have to spend a lot of money to acquire said pieces. And it's like, is it worth that to them? And that's a decision that they entirely have to make, but they kind of have to choose their identity. All these teams you have to choose your identity, and you have to realize, am I willing to open my pocketbook to have said identity? The Bay Area Breakers have made a lot of moves in the offseason and actually currently have no players rostered that they had at the end of the 2025 season. They have shipped off everyone. The only players they're going to be able to retain are Samantha Parker and Maya Bowie. These women are both high upside, haven't had too much time to develop. I feel like Samantha's been playing a while, but she hasn't really seen a bunch of court time. So these girls, they hit really hard. I think they could be day ruiners, but probably not women who you're going to win a title with. So I expect them to look to make savvy picks on the male side, but it's tough to really know what they have in store for us. The California Black Bears, after required waiver drops, are only going to be left with Michael Lloyd and Lena Pedegamaite. They are both really amazing players. I do wonder if Michael might be traded back to the Ranchers, if that's something that's being explored, because A, he's from the area, and then B, his connection with now being like the head of development, their academy, junior academy, I'm not sure, but he's the head of something there that has to do with the Ranchers. So I do wonder if he might get shipped back there, but generally, since they only have 2 players, they have to acquire 4. Tough to say what they're planning on doing, but I don't expect them to spin big just because they are so far from being truly contenders. But you never know. You never know. It'd be cool if one of these teams did spin big on a piece or two and really kind of shook up the landscape of MLP. The Carolina Hogs currently have Craig Johnson, DJ Young, James Delgado, Angie Walker, and Ava Ignatowicz. I wrote in my notes that I think they don't have to drop anyone, but I wrote that they're just as likely to drop anyone as they are everyone. So I wouldn't expect the Hogs to really spend big in the draft. Their piece with the most trade value is probably going to be DJ Young, and even so, I feel like a lot of upper teams, like, they won't really want to touch him. He is just really quite volatile, but I think that they just typically haven't been the most invested team. So I'll be curious. I would love if they surprised us, but I have no idea what they'll look like, and I don't think they'll look much different than they do as it stands. But they could drop everyone. They could drop everyone. I wouldn't be surprised if they dropped everyone either. The Florida Smash currently have Kaysen Campbell, Travis Rettenmeyer, and Martina Frantova. They have to drop Paula Rivez. I never know if I'm saying people's names right, and I always feel bad. So I'm sorry if you're a player watching this and I said your name wrong. I apologize. Even though the Florida Smash are not really in that middle tier, I wouldn't be surprised if they got there. If any team was going to get there, I think it would be them. Travis is really super solid. Kaysen, high upside, could totally pan out. I wouldn't be surprised if, Graham and Travis and whoever's involved in the team has their eye on some younger guys that they might want to consider. But I do think that the Smash are probably heavily looking to target Kaylen Campbell. Then they had Kaylen and Kaysen. I also think the Smash, like Utah, really do want to have a homegrown team. So I think it's very likely that their 5th and 6th spots will be occupied by Florida players. And I wouldn't be surprised if they have some juniors or anything in mind. I also think they're probably pretty motivated because of the recent opening of their club in St. Petersburg that is also going to be a host of an event. So your team is hosting an event, you probably want to do decent there. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Smash kind of makes some moves, spend a little money, and move up into that middle tier. The SoCal Hard Eights were super savvy on waivers last year, but unfortunately for them, the rules did not change and they were not able to retain any of those players they picked up on waivers. They were also impacted by Ryan Fu being terminated due to the Japan situation, and they are left with only Irina Tereshchenko and Blaine Hovinier on their rosters. I don't expect them to drop either of them. I wouldn't be surprised if Adam has some juniors in mind, some big pulls. I also wouldn't be surprised if he tries to reacquire Kalen or John Lucian Goins. So I'll be very curious what the Hard Eights have in store for us. I don't expect them to spin big, but I do expect them to be smart, and I do expect them to have an excellent team culture and fighting spirit, because the Hard Eights were not a fun team to play last year, and I expect that to continue to be the case, especially with Blaine pointing all the time. So all right, so that is all the teams in my recap and what I expect them to do. My throat is hurting from talking so much. I actually stopped multiple times in this video to drink water. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Let me know what you guys think is going to happen, and please subscribe if you enjoyed, and I appreciate you guys all so much. Bye.